Understand this. I'm a black man in America, right? I walk around with a 19 on my hip, a SIG in my glove compartment, and an AR-15 in my 2020 Honda Accord daily, right? And you know what I don't do with those things? I don't go and impede law enforcement carrying out their duties. You know what I do? I mind my business. That's all I do. I go out there, I drink water, I get money, and I mind my business. You know my favorite saying, right? And for some reason, I'm able to survive. Every single day, I'm able to come home, run my kids a bath, tuck them in, and continue to do my thing. No harm comes to me, no harm comes to my family. I also have a 12 gauge pump away from the kids, of course, because you got to be a responsible pew pew owner, okay? And no harm comes to me and my family because I mind my business. I let the law do the law things. If I have beef, I petition my lawmakers. I don't go and take it out on law enforcement who are also citizens and Americans like me. And for some reason, I'm still here. There's a lesson in that.
Dan, I think what we need to take a look at here is the situation in its totality. What happened leading up to this situation? The suspect decided to inject himself into a law enforcement action. What's not being said here is the fact that Border Patrol agents and law enforcement were conducting a targeted law enforcement effort against a violent, illegal alien that was nearby, and that suspect injected himself into that law enforcement situation with a weapon. And what happened between when that situation first came about and the shooting, that's going to be investigated, and we're going to get to the facts of that.
What is the line? Where does it go from peaceful protest, I have a First Amendment right to do that, to I'm going to get arrested protesting, to I'm going to get shot to death?
We have clearly from the very beginning followed the exact same process and protocols that have been implemented this entire administration and that the previous administration followed and has gone on in law enforcement interactions for. It is, you cannot impede a law enforcement investigation and operation. When an officer tells you to back off and gives you orders, you should comply and explain. You shouldn't show up with weapons then no ID and no indication of how they're going to be used. And that aggressive interaction, laying hands on law enforcement officers, clearly is a crime, and it is something that should not be acceptable.
You do not get to attack law enforcement officials in this country without any repercussions. You do not get to do that in Minnesota, LA, or anywhere else. And the interagency is leading the charge out there. We've already arrested with the interagency those that violated the FACE Act and impeded a peaceful prayer in church. We've already just last night arrested 4 more individuals involved in the damage of government property that we saw the videos of online. We've arrested other individuals who've made threats to law enforcement online. So we are not messing around. It doesn't have to be in person. If you threaten law enforcement officials or civilians, we are going to come find you. And as for this latest shooting, yes, DHS and HSI are the lead, and the FBI is processing the physical evidence. So we're in possession of the firearm, which is going to go to our laboratory. But as Secretary Noem said, no one who wants to be peaceful shows up at a protest with a firearm that is loaded with 2 full magazines.
I'm very confused about why the conversation is about what you're talking about, instead of focusing on what really matters, which is why in one city, in one place do we have these problems. We deport 10 times the number of illegal aliens out of Texas than we do out of Minneapolis. Why do we hear nothing out of Texas about any of the same problems that we have in Minneapolis? I'll tell you why. Because in Texas, we have the cooperation and support of local law enforcement so that we can do these operations safely, keeping U.S. citizens and others protected and safe. That is not what we have in Minneapolis. And the fact that it's the administration that's being blamed for the utter failure of leadership in Minneapolis is not right. It's not appropriate.
But are you saying those officers? You have been a supporter of the Second Amendment. When Secretary Noem says, I don't know of any peaceful protester that shows up with a gun and ammo rather than a sign, do you believe Americans have the right to bear arms while they're protesting?
Well, first of all, I'm a co-sponsor of Louisiana's law that allows you to have a concealed carry permit. It's worked very well there. I don't know the state law in Minnesota. I know in a state like Louisiana, and frankly, most states, you are not allowed to carry a gun while you're committing another crime. And interfering with law enforcement is a felony. It's something that, unfortunately, we're seeing in a lot of cities. You even had the police chief yesterday, Chief O'Hara, that you just had on, yesterday said of the protests going on after the shooting that they were unlawful.
Yes.
He actually said it was an unlawful assembly, what a lot of people are doing. And they were throwing things at ICE agents, throwing projectiles that could harm ICE agents. So let's tone this down. And leaders in Minnesota, by the way, have been ratcheting up the rhetoric. I mean, you saw the Governor Walz said they're FAFO. He said they're violently hurting people.
Look at the Arizona AG, who just yesterday, by the way, this is an AG who got voters to elect her to be the top cop. She's never practiced law. She was a law professor. She's a radical. And she comes out yesterday and says people should use stand your ground laws to shoot ICE officers. I mean, these are Democrats who, by the way, hate stand your ground laws when law-abiding citizens use them to actually defend themselves against criminals. But now they want to use them and tell people to go after ICE agents. And it should shock no one that we're seeing these types of incidents tragically unfold because the Dems, and I would suggest even foreign interests, are so busy using these agitators, some of them paid, as pawns. They do not care about their safety. All they care about is ginning them up, getting them out there, they want them to put themselves in harm's way because it helps them create this frenzied, false, deceptive narrative. And all they care is about winning a partisan narrative war.
That's right.
I hope people are watching this and they are hearing what I am saying. The Dems do not care about these agitators or so-called protesters' safety, because if they did, they would say, when Biden and his handlers told all of our state and locals to release everybody in their jails that were here illegally, even though they committed felonies, and now Trump is going after those people that Biden released, trying to get them out of the communities, they would say, let them do their jobs. Trump won on this. They won. They're trying to enforce the law. Don't just let them do their jobs. I got an idea, state and locals. Why don't we help them? That will bring peace and order and safety, real safety, to the communities, not ginning up these agitators.
America, I love you, but you gotta wake up. The fact that they are using culture wars in order to distract us from their own wrongdoings. They're taking advantage of all of us, obviously. People are leaving the Democratic Party in droves because they are waking up to the fact that they play on your heartstrings on purpose. Democrats give their voters a false sense of moral superiority. We're the party that cares for people. We're the party that's welcoming. We're the party that loves everybody. America was founded on immigrants. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that. But immigrants who came here legally and contributed to the system. When you import a mass amount of people at the same time, you're doing it on purpose. You're doing it to destabilize the country's systems, the infrastructure. And then you rely on those same people that you imported for votes to keep you in power. This is why they had open borders. They were importing voters that they could use to launder money and funnel it back to them. Americans are struggling. And people who can come over here who have not paid a dime into our system get to reap all the benefits using our tax dollars. People who are defending this, you're okay with this? People who are okay with this because they are brainwashed into thinking they are the party of morality. There's a reason people become more conservative as they get older, because their frontal lobe develops and you start thinking with your brain instead of your heart. Facts over feelings, people. Facts over feelings.
People in Minnesota want to know when this surge will end. Has there been a date set? Is there a certain number of people you want to apprehend before you decide to ease the surge?
We continue to apprehend dozens, if not hundreds, of these criminal illegal aliens a day. We're going to continue conducting that mission. We're not going to put a date or a timeline to stop this mission. This mission's ongoing until there are no more of those criminal illegal aliens roaming the streets of Minneapolis.
Is there a number, though? You have to have a file.
There is a number, and it's called all of them.
Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, ring that notification bell so you know every time I post a new video. If you like what I'm doing over here, you want to show a little extra love and support, be sure to check out our website, crownandthread.com. That's where you can grab all the awesome clothes you see me wearing in all of my videos, like this one. It says, "He conquered as the lamb, returns as the lion." You know, the Lion of Judah, that would be King Jesus. And these are all handmade by my beautiful wife. We got tons of different designs to choose from, Christian, conservative, sizes ranging from
Good afternoon, Jackie. Thank you for that. Thanks for coming in on a snow for the rest of the government in the country. And as much of the country feels the impacts of that winter storm, President Trump continues to monitor the situation closely, and he has remained in constant contact with FEMA and emergency responders. President Trump also quickly approved 12 federal emergency disaster declarations within 24 hours for the states of Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia, enabling these states to access critical federal resources to supplement their response efforts if needed. These declarations will help state-led efforts of turning power back on, clearing roads for emergency services, and keeping communities safe. The White House will continue to correspond directly with governors and local officials in the coming days, especially in those states that were harshly impacted by this storm. I would also like to address the chaotic scenes in Minnesota over the weekend. Nobody in the White House, including President Trump, wants to see people getting hurt or killed in America's streets. This includes Renee Good, Alex Preddy, the brave men and women of federal law enforcement, and the many Americans who have been victimized at the hands of illegal alien criminals. Saturday's shooting remains under active investigation by Homeland Security Investigations and the FBI. The Customs and Border Protection is also conducting their own internal review. As President Trump said yesterday, the administration is reviewing everything with respect to the shooting, and we will let that investigation play out. But let's be clear about the circumstances which led to that moment on Saturday. This tragedy occurred as a result of a deliberate and hostile resistance by Democrat leaders in Minnesota. For weeks, Governor Walz and the Mayor Jacob Frey and other elected Democrats were spreading lies about federal law enforcement officers who are risking their lives daily to remove the worst criminal illegal aliens from our streets: murderers, rapists, pedophiles, human traffickers, and gang members. Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have shamefully blocked local and state police from cooperating with ICE, actively inhibiting efforts to arrest violent criminals. They have also used their platforms to encourage left-wing agitators to stalk, record, confront, and obstruct federal officers who are just trying to lawfully perform their duties, which has created dangerous situations threatening both these officers and the general public and Minnesotans alike. This is precisely what unfolded in Minneapolis on Saturday morning. Obstructing federal law enforcement and inciting violence against officers is wrong and illegal. This used to be a universally accepted position in the United States. Amid the hysteria, we must remember how we got here to this moment today and what this Democrat opposition is about. Former President Joe Biden and the Democrats opened America's borders for 4 years, inviting tens of millions of illegal aliens from all over the world to flood into our country. Among them, violent criminals who terrorized American communities and have inflicted devastating, permanent pain and harm on law-abiding Americans and their families. Yet we never saw outrage from Democrats or their allies in the liberal media over these horrifying crimes against U.S. citizens. The pain of American angel families was ignored and dismissed because it undermined the Democrat narrative. Innocent Americans like Jocelyn Nungray, Laken Riley, and Rachel Morin are just a few of the many victims savagely murdered by illegal alien criminals. Earlier this month, an illegal alien from Mexico with a long criminal history who came into our country under Joe Biden's administration threw a baseball-sized stone at a school bus carrying children in New Jersey and fractured the skull of an 8-year-old innocent child. President Trump promised accountability to these American families by securing the border, deporting every illegal alien who has committed crimes, especially and most importantly, violent crimes. Nearly 80 million Americans voted for him to deliver on that very promise, and he is. As the duly elected president, the president is fulfilling the will of the people by arresting and removing these threats from our country in cities from Los Angeles to New York, and yes, Minneapolis. Yet Democrat leaders in Minnesota with sanctuary city policies have actively defied federal immigration law and the will of the people. And as a result of that defiance, 2 Minnesotans have now tragically lost their lives on the streets of Tim Walz's state. It is President Trump's hope and wish and demand for the resistance and chaos to end today. That's why President Trump spoke with Governor Walz directly this morning, and he has outlined a clear and simple path to restoring law and order in Minnesota. Number 1, Governor Walz, Mayor Fry, and all Democrat leaders should turn over all criminal illegal aliens currently incarcerated in their prisons and jails to federal authorities, along with any illegal aliens with active warrants or known criminal histories for immediate deportation. Number 2, state and local law enforcement must agree to turn over all illegal aliens who are arrested by local police. And then thirdly, local police must assist federal law enforcement in apprehending and detaining illegal aliens who are wanted for crimes, especially violent crimes. If Governor Walz and Mayor Fry implement these common sense cooperative measures that I will add have already been implemented in nearly every single other state across the country, Customs and Border Patrol will not be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement can peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions. Additionally, President Trump is calling on the United States Congress to immediately pass legislation ending sanctuary cities once and for all. American cities should be safe sanctuaries for law-abiding citizens only, not for dangerous illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws and do not belong here. We hope Governor Walz will do the right thing and continue to work with President Trump to keep the American people safe following their call this morning. Americans overwhelmingly want exactly what President Trump is delivering: strong borders and strict immigration enforcement against the worst illegal aliens, of which there are still hundreds of thousands to deport from the interior of our country. The most peaceful way to carry out this vital public safety mission is for Republicans and Democrats to do it together, and for state and local law enforcement to work together with federal law enforcement. We want to let cops be cops. You wouldn't know this continues to be a very popular policy position from the biased media coverage over the course of the last few days, but polling shows huge support for this exact thing President Trump is calling for. More than 80% of Americans favor deporting illegal aliens convicted of violent crimes. A country unable to deport criminals who enter it illegally is no country at all. The open borders agenda of Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, and the Democrats was already on the ballot on November 5th, 2024, and it was resoundingly rejected. President Trump will never back down from his promise to deport violent criminal illegal aliens and make America safe again, and he welcomes all cooperation in that effort. With that, I will answer your questions. And Jordan Conradson, why don't you kick us off today? Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Caroline. Jordan Conradson from Gateway Pundit. I have a few questions. First, with respect to the shooting in Minneapolis, we're seeing massive outrage from mainstream media and the left, but I'm just wondering, where was that outrage when Ashley Babbitt, an Air Force veteran, was executed by Capitol Police Officer Michael Byrd, who she posed no threat to in the U.S. Capitol?
Well, you raised a very important point, which I also believe that I just raised as well in those opening remarks, in that there has no doubt been selective outrage by the liberal biased media in picking and choosing victims and highlighting their stories. And as I've said, President Trump does not want any Americans to lose their lives in the streets of America and in American communities across the country. He believes what happened on Saturday is a tragedy, but every life is equal to President Trump, and that's why the lives of Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray continue to matter to him and be an utmost priority to him to this very day. And it's unfortunate that we did not see the same type of sensationalist media coverage over the tragic deaths of those innocent American women and girls across the country as we are in the wake of this tragedy that took place on Saturday. Gabe. Sure, go ahead, Jordan.
I want to get your response to this. The Arizona Attorney General, just days before this shooting in Minneapolis, she seemingly encouraged rioters to go out, shoot, and kill ICE agents. And I'll quote her here. She said, "If you reasonably believe your life's in danger and you're in the house or in your car or on your property, you can defend yourself with lethal force." And she said that you can't tell if ICE agents are law enforcement or imposters, and it becomes an issue of whether you reasonably believe they were law enforcement. Do you have a response to that, and does the White House believe that she should be held accountable for these remarks?
Such dangerous rhetoric, as I pointed out, is exactly what has brought us to this position today, where you have elected Democrat officials across the country who are encouraging left-wing agitators and crazy people to go out and unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement. Again, these brave men and women of ICE and Border Patrol and the federal enforcement are just trying to do their jobs to enforce our nation's immigration laws and to go after the worst of the worst in this country. I would encourage everyone in this room, and I would encourage the Arizona Attorney General to look at the video of an ICE agent in Minneapolis. He was approached by left-wing agitators who were honking their horns and were screaming slurs at him. And he rolled down his window and he said, "What are you doing? I am out here trying to catch a child predator, somebody who has convicted crimes against an innocent child, and you are trying to obstruct me from doing my job." This rhetoric against ICE, comparing them to Nazi Gestapo, Donald Trump's police force, is despicable, it is shameful, and it is precisely what has led to the escalation of tensions in Minneapolis and in other places across the country. Gabe, go ahead.
For justifying violence.
I would defer you to the Department of Justice on that.
Thank you, Caroline.
Gabe.
Regarding Minnesota, on Saturday, the Department of Homeland Security posted that Preddy looks like he wanted to do maximum damage to massacre law enforcement. Stephen Miller on Saturday posted that, or called Preddy a would-be assassin. Why did administration officials jump to conclusions before an investigation had even been conducted?
Well, look, this has obviously been a very fluid and fast-moving situation throughout the weekend. As for President Trump, whom I speak for, he has said that he wants to let the investigation continue and let the facts lead in this case.
With regards to the deployment of Tom Homan to Minneapolis, should the deployment of Mr. Homan to Minneapolis be seen as a sign that the president is dissatisfied with how the officials on the ground had handled the incident?
No, Mr. Homan is doing an exceptional job, and he has been working with Secretary Noem and President Trump over the course of the last year. Secretary Noem still has the utmost confidence and trust of the President of the United States, and she's continuing to oversee the entire Department of Homeland Security and all of the immigration enforcement that's taking place across the whole entire country. Of course, Secretary Noem is also in charge of FEMA, and we are in the wake of a brutal winter storm where hundreds of thousands of Americans have been impacted by that. So Borders Are Homan is in a unique position to drop everything and go to Minnesota to continue having these productive conversations with state and local officials. And I know that he's catching a plane in just a few hours to do just that at the request of the president. Jennifer.
On Saturday's shooting, has the president been briefed, and have you been briefed on specific details of the shooting? How many shots were fired? How many guns discharged? And I mean, did the protesters' gun go off, or only the officers' guns? Do you have any of those details?
Again, the investigation is continuing, Jennifer, and we will let the facts lead and we will let the facts play out in this investigation. I do know that HSI and FBI are conducting interviews with those that were involved and the agents who were involved in this unfortunate tragedy on Saturday.
Are they keeping the president up to date on all those details?
The president is obviously very much on the ball with respect to this investigation. I think he's made that quite clear with the various statements that you've seen him put out, and also the 4 points that the president has outlined as well to Governor Walz, and to encourage him to cooperate with ICE and with the administration. Mary.
Thanks, Caroline. To follow on Gabe's question, Secretary Noem said Alex Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Stephen Miller labeled Preddy a domestic terrorist. Does the president agree with them?
Look, as I've said, I have not heard the president characterize Mr. Preddy in that way. However, I have heard the president say he wants to let the facts and the investigation lead itself.
Was he alarmed to hear his top officials referring to him in that way, rushing to that judgment?
Danny, go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. On Stephen Miller's comments, will Stephen Miller be apologising to the family of Alex Preddy for calling him, quote, an assassin who tried to murder federal agents, despite the fact that, as you say, this is still under investigation?
Look, again, this incident remains under investigation, and nobody here at the White House, including the President of the United States, wants to see Americans hurt or killed and losing their lives in American streets. And we mourn for the parents. As a mother myself, of course, I cannot imagine the loss of life, especially losing one's child. And that same empathy from the President goes for the parents of angel families, parents of victims of illegal alien crime across our country as well. And that's exactly why the president continues to be wholeheartedly committed to deporting the worst of the worst criminals from our country. Why don't we go to the back? Kelly.
Does the president believe that the killing, though, was a mistake? Has he expressed that at all?
Again, the president has said we have to review it, and this investigation needs to continue, and he's letting the facts on the investigation lead itself.
Body camera footage to be released to the public now?
That's not something I've heard the president commit to, so I won't do that from the podium. Sure.
Caroline, how serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state officials in Minnesota are actively coordinating with demonstrators through encrypted or non-encrypted communications, as well as providing government resources to impede immigration enforcement operations?
I'm sorry, Carrie, could you repeat your question?
How serious is the administration taking allegations that local and state Minnesota officials are communicating with demonstrators to basically impede immigration officials?
Well, we've definitely seen active organization amongst these left-wing groups, Carrie, and it is something that I know the FBI and the Department of Justice are looking into. Again, it is illegal to unlawfully obstruct lawful immigration enforcement in this country. And these agitators are making it nearly impossible for ICE to do their jobs and for federal law enforcement to carry out the will of the American people to deport the worst of the worst. I would just encourage everyone to please imagine in this room, all of you come to the White House every day to report on the President of the United States and the administration. You come into this briefing room, you walk through the gates of the White House. Just imagine if there were left-wing agitators or agitators of any kind who were in your face, who were doxing you, who were harassing you, who were physically threatening you, who were biting off your fingers in the case of two Border Patrol agents we saw this past weekend in Minneapolis. That would make it very difficult for you to show up and do your job here at the White House every single day. That's what these officers in Minneapolis are facing. That's why the president is calling on Governor Walz and Mayor Frey for these three very simple and common sense points of cooperation so that ICE and local law enforcement can work together. Again, we are just asking for police to be police. And if you ask any law enforcement agent or official, they want to be able to work with their federal counterparts at the state and local level and vice versa.
Caroline. Thanks a lot, Caroline. Two questions. One is looking forward. The role of Mr. Homan. Is he being sent by the president to diffuse the situation that exists right now on the ground? Is he the point person essentially for the White House in terms of trying to tamp down the tensions that exist right now in Minnesota?
Well, Mr. Homan is the point person for cooperating with state and local authorities and corresponding with them, again, to achieve this level of cooperation to subdue the chaos on the streets of Minneapolis. And I would just point out that Mr. Homan is someone who has been lauded for many, many decades for his experience working in law enforcement. In fact, this is a Washington Post headline from 9 years ago, 2016. Meet the man the White House has honored for deporting illegal immigrants. And I would remind everyone in this room that it was former President Barack Hussein Obama who awarded a medal to Mr. Homan. So he's obviously very qualified. He has the full trust and faith of the president. He will continue to have these meetings in the hopes that ICE and local law enforcement can cooperate and work together to have successful immigration enforcement, as we've seen in almost every other state across the country.
And secondly, Caroline, can you talk a little bit about tomorrow's trip by the president to Iowa, what the purpose of that trip is, what the goals of that trip are?
Sure, yes. Tomorrow, President Trump will be traveling to Des Moines, Iowa. He will be making a local visit at a local business, and then he will be giving a speech on affordability and on the economy. And I know he very much looks forward to being there, to meeting with the great people of Iowa, but also lawmakers as well. Jake.
Caroline, a couple quick questions. First, does the president remain fully confident in Kristi Noem's ability to lead the DHS?
Yes.
And then just secondly, just on that Wall Street Journal reporting that we saw yesterday, the president said at some point that the immigration enforcement officers would leave Minneapolis. Did the Saturday killing of Alex Pretty expedite that withdrawal at all?
To your first question, the answer is yes. He still has confidence and trust in Secretary Noem. To the second question, I would point you back to what I said earlier. If Governor Walz and Mayor Frey implement these common sense cooperative measures, CBP will no longer be needed to support ICE on the ground in Minnesota. ICE and local law enforcement will peacefully work together, as they are effectively doing in so many other states and jurisdictions, to remove violent criminals from American neighborhoods across the country.
Did Walz ask the president to remove the immigration enforcement officers?
He asked the president to scale down, and the president reiterated what the president put out in his statement yesterday and what I'm sharing with all of you as well. I would just add on this level of cooperation a few statistics that I think are very important. 7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C. We had a great level of cooperation with Mayor Bowser and the local government, and we have been able to remove thousands of illegal aliens from the District of Columbia, where you all live. So you can thank President Trump for that. The murder rate in Washington, D.C. has plummeted as a result. There were no riots. There were no protests. Nobody was tragically killed as a result of that level of cooperation between federal and local authorities. And again, that's all the president is asking for in Minnesota. It's totally common sense. Jared, go ahead.
Thank you. Caroline, in this process, you continue to describe the situation in Minneapolis as chaos. Was there any mistake made by Secretary Noem that led the president to send Mr. Holman there?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Did Secretary Noem make a mistake which led to...
If she made any mistake that could lead the president to send Mr. Holman to Minneapolis?
No, as I already mentioned, Mr. Holman has been working alongside Secretary Noem and for the president over the course of the last year. And again, he's uniquely positioned to hop on a flight to Minnesota today to continue this correspondence with state and local authorities, and that's what he's going to be doing. Fran.
Caroline, is it the White House's position that Americans have the right to show up to these ICE operations and film, document, or protest the law enforcement actions?
All Americans have a First Amendment constitutional right, of course. But Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede and obstruct lawful immigration enforcement operations. That is actually a crime, and it's something that we've seen taking place in the streets of Minneapolis, which again is leading to these dangerous circumstances that these federal law enforcement officers have been forced to work within.
Back to the call with Governor Walz this morning. The president described it as respectful. He said, we seem to be on a similar wavelength, but you had strong criticism for the governor and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, just now. So could you explain the difference in tone between what the president had said in his True Social post and I think some of the criticisms that you just levied from the podium?
Fran, I think the criticisms that I laid out, I'm painting the picture for all of you in this room, are what led to the moment that we are in today, where Governor Walz and President Trump are having a conversation, a constructive and productive conversation to end the chaos and the lawlessness that has taken place in Governor Walz's state. Elena.
Thank you. I had a question. With Holman now going to Minnesota, is Gregory Bovino also going to remain in Minnesota overseeing these ICE operations?
Mr. Bovino is a wonderful man, and he's a great professional. He is going to very much continue to lead Customs and Border Patrol throughout and across the country. Mr. Holman will be the main point of contact on the ground in Minneapolis.
And to follow up, given what we've heard from several Trump administration officials, people like Stephen Miller, as people point out, calling him a domestic terrorist, Bovino saying that Preddy was out to massacre law enforcement. Why not require ICE agents to wear body cameras to clear up some of the disputes that we are hearing from witnesses and video footage versus what the administration has been saying?
Well, that's a policy question that I know the policy folks in the building are having with members on Capitol Hill, and I'll leave it to them and the president to make that decision.
And I just my final question is on, you were talking about the level of cooperation that the president talked about with Governor Walz. Will the administration commit to cooperating with local officials on this investigation into Alex Preddy?
The president spoke about this with Governor Walz and said he would have a discussion about it. He did not make a commitment, and so therefore I won't make that commitment here. I would just remind all of you in the media, because I've seen a lack of reporting on this fact, there are investigations into what took place on Saturday. The Homeland Security investigations and the FBI have teamed up for an investigation, and there's also an internal CBP investigation, an internal review of what is happening on the ground in Minnesota. The president supports those investigations, and as I've said repeatedly, he wants to see them move forward. Phil.
FBI Director Kash Patel said in a Sunday interview, quote, "You cannot bring a firearm loaded with multiple magazines to any sort of protest." Does the president believe the Second Amendment rights remain in effect even when protesting?
The president supports the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding American citizens. Absolutely. There has been no greater supporter or defender of the right to bear arms than President Donald J. Trump. So while Americans have a constitutional right to bear arms, Americans do not have a constitutional right to impede lawful immigration enforcement operations. And any gun owner knows that when you are carrying a weapon, when you are bearing arms and you are confronted by law enforcement, you are raising the assumption of risk and the risk of force being used against you. And again, that's unfortunately what took place on Saturday.
Will his mission continue to be focusing on illegal immigrants with a criminal history, or will it be on illegal immigration generally?
Mr. Holman will continue to enforce our nation's immigration laws, especially deporting the worst of the worst criminals in Minnesota who have committed violent offenses. And I would just remind all of you that this important work is continuing to be carried out. In just the last few days, I'm happy to provide this packet to anyone in the room. ICE has arrested multiple violent criminals, illegal aliens within Minnesota. Many of them have convictions for assault, driving under the influence, fraud. This individual here I'm looking at was an aggravated felon with multiple convictions for larceny, fraud, and forgery of checks, vehicle theft, drug possession, domestic assault, inflicting bodily harm on another, criminal convictions of larceny, identity theft, again, charged with driving under the influence. These are extremely dangerous people who Governor Walz and Mayor Frey have allowed to roam on their streets. And all the president is asking for is cooperation to arrest individuals like this and deport them from the United States of America. I'll take a couple more. Go ahead.
Okay, so this weekend the president posted that this is a cover-up of the fraud in the state of Minnesota. He also posted Minnesota is a cover-up. These both happened after the shooting. So given these came after the shooting, what is the this here? What is the cover-up he's alleging?
Yes, it's a good question. I spoke with the president about this at length. What the president is referring to is the fact that you have Governor Walz and, again, the mayor, who have been encouraging these left-wing agitators to come out and to harass and to dox and to threaten ICE and to make this conversation about and smear lies about federal law enforcement who, again, are just trying to do their jobs in an attempt to distract from the widespread massive fraud that has taken place in their state. Billions and billions of dollars has been stolen from law-abiding taxpayers in Minnesota, and the administration continues to be very focused on getting to the bottom of it, and especially, and the president raised a good question over the weekend with respect to Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who now has a net worth within the millions, and one must ask themselves, why and how is that possible? Is she connected to the fraud rings that we have seen taking place within her state and her own district? It's a question the American people are raising, and the president believes it's one worth answering. Haley.
Thanks, Caroline. I want to go back to some of the comments from Stephen Miller and Secretary No. You've made clear the president wants to see the investigation play out. When answering some of the questions on the specific details, is he concerned that some of those definitive statements made by other officials risks public perception of the credibility of those investigations now playing out?
Again, the president believes that these investigations are credible, they are continuing, they are active, and he wants to let them play out. Alex.
Caroline, thank you. Is the administration willing to separate DHS funding from other funding bills in order to avoid a broader shutdown?
Look, at this point, the White House supports the bipartisan work that was done to advance the bipartisan appropriations package, and we want to see that passed. Policy discussions on immigration in Minnesota are happening. Look, the president is leading those discussions as evidenced by his correspondence with Governor Walz this morning, but that should not be at the expense of government funding for the American people, which would include, as you know, Alex, FEMA funding, and we are in the midst of the storm that took place over the weekend, and many Americans are still being impacted by that. So we absolutely do not want to see that funding lapse, and we want the Senate to move forward with passing the bipartisan appropriations package that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis.
Secondly, there's another round of Russia-Ukraine talks this weekend, Sunday. If you can walk us through with the president, how he would be involved in that, if at all. We'll be talking to President Putin, President Zelensky ahead of those meetings.
I'm not tracking any scheduled calls at this point in time. However, the president remains deeply involved, and of course, he's being apprised by his advisors, namely Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Witkoff, on these talks. They had a multilateral meeting this past weekend, which didn't get a ton of coverage, but that was historic in nature, where the president's team has really brought two sides of this war to the table together to move the ball closer towards peace. So the president is not giving up on the peace process. He obviously just met with President Zelensky when we were in Davos, Switzerland, but I'm not tracking any calls scheduled for this week. On one more foreign policy point, I will point out, as you all saw, the last remaining body of the hostages, Israeli hostages in Gaza, has been returned. This is a huge foreign policy feat for the President of the United States, for the state of Israel, and frankly, for the whole world. The President made the impossible possible, and so it's great news for the President, for the United States, for our allies, and also for peace in the Middle East. And I understand that more than 20 new additional countries have also signed up to join the newly established Board of Peace with respect to the rebuilding of Gaza, which is another historic accomplishment for this president. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you in Iowa tomorrow.
Angeles at the U.S. Attorney's Office, we're talking about fraud. This place has become one of the epicenters for fraud, waste, and abuse in America. $3.5 billion just here in Los Angeles County, we think, around hospice and home health care. Then you add in all the other things like they have in Minnesota, but in California scale, it's huge.
And what we have witnessed is a 7-fold increase in hospice in LA County. That doesn't happen naturally. There are not 7 times more deaths in LA County than there were 5 years ago. These fraudsters, and these do tend to be foreign influences. These are Russian Armenian gangs, mafia, that are leading a lot of these efforts, we believe, have been able to corrupt and work with doctors who are willing to lie, to use that MD degree, as a license to kill.
A lot of it's driven by foreigners who came to Los Angeles, very different culture, Russian Armenian groups, and this mafia seems to have taken over the system. They've corrupted doctors, they've normalized fraud so that everyone sort of expects it, but the magnitude of it is so great that we have to take it on aggressively. It's a focus area for CMS, and this administration under President Trump is not going to tolerate taxpayer dollars being stolen because people aren't paying attention anymore. We're focused on this. I'm here in Los Angeles at the U.S. Attorney's Office. We're talking about fraud.
Hey, what's up, you guys? I've got some really great news. Today, I didn't get shot by ICE. I don't know how I managed it. I really don't, because I understand that they're shooting people that aren't white, and, whew, amazing. Maybe tomorrow. But also, I was thinking, I think we need to calm down. I think everybody needs to just chill and calm down. And so I have some, call them rules, call them suggestions. But I think we all follow these rules. I think we're gonna get through it together. I think first of all, we have to stay home, because stay home saves lives. So if you see ICE out in your community, stay home. Stay home until you're told otherwise. Stay home saves lives. They have to wear masks because masks works. Follow the science, mask works. Also, if you must go out, stay 6 feet away from ICE agents at the minimum. It's for everybody's safety, of course. Now, don't be grandma killers. Don't be grandma killers. We don't want that. Now, if all of this sounds difficult for you, remember, it's not about you. It's not about you. Don't be selfish. Remember, this is only going to continue until we flatten the illegal alien invasion curve. That's it. It's probably going to be 15 days. Probably. So just relax. Remember, we're all in this together. This is an unprecedented pandemic of illegal invasion. And if we stick together, we're going to get fine. So I think that's going to help everybody, right? I think so. All right. Well, see y'all.
Hey everyone, this is Minnesota State Representative Pam Altendorf. It is Saturday morning and many people are finding out that there was another shooting that happened here in Minneapolis. I'm sad to report that, and it's also just devastating to see the leadership that we have in Governor Walz. After the shooting, he immediately went and did a social media post calling our federal agents violent and untrained. And quite frankly, that is absolutely unacceptable of a leader of our state to be talking that way without knowing the facts, without knowing what happened, and rushing to that conclusion, which then is inciting violence. There's no way around this. Our governor Walz and Mayor Fry of Minneapolis are inciting violence. It's also inarguable that people are coming into Minnesota. They're being bussed in from all over the country. And it's like a standoff right now. We're in a pressure cooker here in Minnesota, unfortunately. One that all of the good people of Minnesota never asked for. We don't want to be here. We don't want to be in the state. But it is our leadership that is driving this hostile atmosphere, this violence that is happening. I did a video earlier and I mentioned, this isn't happening in other Democrat-held states like Colorado and Michigan. ICE is all over the country. President Trump was elected to help deport some of the criminal aliens that had come across the borders over the Biden administration. And it's my understanding that this is not happening in other states, not other blue states, because those governors are in some form cooperating with the federal officers. Here in Minnesota, we have leadership of Walz and Mayor Fry who are inciting violence. And I want to talk to all the people of Minnesota because this is putting us in a very dangerous situation. We saw what happened in 2020 after the riots. We saw the leadership of Walz that let our Minneapolis burn for days. Complete chaos, fires, people are throwing bricks, they're looting buildings. Minnesota, we do not want this again. We do not want this again. So Walz, let me tell you, like a leader would come out and say, we had an unfortunate situation today. There was a shooting and I will withhold all comments until we see the facts. Meanwhile, Minnesota, we love our state and please hold your judgment until we see the video evidence and are able to determine what happened in that incident. But no, not Walz. Walz came out and literally blamed the federal agents, saying that they were violent and untrained, and that is completely unacceptable. So please, everyone, please, I'm going to just say it again. We have to realize Minnesota here is the epicenter, and there's a reason. They are trying to ignite this violence. It is covering up the fraud, over $9 billion of fraud under Governor Walz. And we need to say no. We have to, if people are participating in this, we have to start calling it out. If someone had a gun and pointed it at federal agents, absolutely, without a doubt, the federal agents have a right to protect themselves. And again, if that's what happened, okay, So rushing to judgment, demonizing the police, demonizing the law enforcement, inciting this violence is absolutely unacceptable. We have to call it out if we want to get our state back, if we want to get control of our state again and have law and order, which most Minnesotans want. So please, whether you're a Democrat, a leader, a pastor, a priest, someone of authority, coaches, please join me and raise your voice in saying that we need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to support our law enforcement, and at the same time realize that if there's any problems with law enforcement, that we need to hold them accountable. But that's not what's happening here. Right now, we are seeing our leadership of Walz and Fry inciting violence. And please, if there's anything you can do around the state to help call this off, please join me in one unified voice. Thanks, everyone. I'm so sorry we're in this position again. God bless. And I want you to know that we're going to get through this, but we really need people to help. And we also need to call it out that we cannot accept Walz using people across Minnesota, inciting this violence, inciting hate against our law enforcement. We have to call it out for what it is. Let the facts come out, and then let justice be served. Thanks, everyone. God bless, and God bless our state of Minnesota.
Okay, I think I have a compromise. This whole Minnesota thing. Not everyone's going to be happy. That's what happens with compromises, but just hear me out. We give Minnesota to Canada in exchange for Alberta. Now, wait, just listen. Canada gets what it likes, Marxists and refugees which defraud their welfare system. And America gets what it likes, normal people and oil, lots of oil. I'm just saying it's worth considering. Okay, I think I have a compromise. This whole Minnesota thing. Not everyone's going to be happy. That's what happens with compromises, but just hear me out. We give Minnesota to Canada in exchange for Alberta. Now, wait, just listen. Canada gets what it likes, Marxists and refugees which defraud their welfare system. And America gets what it likes, normal people and oil, lots of oil. I'm just saying it's worth considering. Okay, I think I have a compromise. This whole Minnesota thing. Not everyone's going to be happy. That's what happens with compromises, but just hear me out. We give Minnesota to Canada in exchange for Alberta. Now, wait, just listen. Canada gets what it likes, Marxists and refugees which defraud their welfare system. And America gets what it likes, normal people and oil, lots of oil. I'm just saying it's worth considering.
Hi, I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., your HHS secretary. On Thursday, the United States formally withdrew from the World Health Organization. We made this decision to reclaim our independence, to protect American sovereignty, and to free our public health policy from a system that no longer serves the American people. The World Health Organization has lost its way. It's drifted far from its founding mission, and it's become mired in bureaucracy and conflicts of interest and in international power politics. During the COVID pandemic, those failures weren't just abstract, they were deadly. The world watched as transparency collapsed, accountability disappeared, and ordinary citizens paid the price. That hasn't changed, and it isn't improving. President Trump recognized the problems with WHO immediately. In fact, one of his very first executive orders of his second term began the formal process of withdrawing the United States from the World Health Organization. It was an early, decisive signal that American health policy would answer to the American people and not to foreign bureaucracies. Today, we're completing that action. Protecting Americans here at home and abroad is our top priority. And that's why my team at HHS, working closely with the HHS career civil servants and scientists and the State Department, has strengthened our biosecurity, upgraded disease surveillance, improved outbreak preparedness, and expanded the rapid response capabilities for any public health emergency wherever it begins. We don't need outside institutions to do that. Going forward, U.S. engagement with the WHO will be limited solely to completing our withdrawal and safeguarding the health and safety of the American people. All U.S. funding has ended. All government U.S. personnel have stopped working there. I believe this deeply that only the United States has the scale, the innovation, and the leadership to drive global health solutions that put people first, starting with our own citizens. Although we are withdrawing from the WHO, America will never withdraw from its leadership in global health. America will continue to lead. We will lead with science, with integrity, and with transparency, and with accountability. And let me say this clearly. For the Americans who died alone in nursing homes, the small businesses that were destroyed by reckless mandates, and the families whose lives were upended by unelected foreign officials who never answered to them, this decision is for you. Thank you.
Produced by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.